welcome to another installment of the Goddess Keys, where we unleash and unlock the tools and jewels needed to support us with our sovereignty and liberation journey. And sometimes that's going to mean ascending and going up in consciousness, and sometimes it's going to mean descending into the deepest, darkest depths of the shadow in order to transmute it. Okay, and so today I want to talk about a really special topic that's been so important to my healing journey. One of the most important things, and it's something I recommend that everybody who is on the awakening path, the ascending path, who identifies as being a star seed or a light worker, I highly recommend that you prioritize this, because it can really mean whether or not, it can be the difference of whether or not you are being manipulated and being used by the false matrix, or whether or not you're able to operate within your own sovereign accord and in alignment with your true north. And that is removing etheric implants. So let's first of all talk about what etheric implants are. I just want to get out in front of this and say that when I first heard about them, I thought it was some weird sci-fi stuff. I didn't think it was true. I didn't want it to be true. When I started learning about this information, it was really scary to see how deep and dark these depths go around mind control and manipulation of the human consciousness. And as I started doing the research and went through my own etheric implant removal process, it enabled me to be able to catapult myself on really releasing myself from fear, releasing myself from woundedness and shame. Not those things didn't come up in my reality, but I was able to not have them rule me as much. And I also found that I was able to express myself more and more. And folks who identify as star seeds and light workers, a big part of our mission and vision at this time is being able to communicate and articulate what have been some of the control mechanisms of the false matrix. How can we liberate ourselves from the false matrix? But one thing I will find is if you are riddled with etheric implants in mind control technology and weaponry, and you're not able to discern if it's there, you're not able to detect it, and then you're not able to remove these things, then you're just like a puppet sometimes. As good as your intentions are, as much of a light worker that you might be, the fact remains, if you have these within your consciousness and you're not able to remove them, then it really can stunt you from doing what you're here to do at this time, okay? So this is a service that I offer both in one-on-one consultations, and I also do have a Patreon where we are diving into this through PDF materials, playlists, meditations, etc. Because I'm really big on, even when I do a one-on-one session with people regarding this, I'm really big on you got to learn how to do this yourself. We're going to do it together. I'm going to empower you on this journey. We're going to start this process, but maintenance and upkeep is a must, because the unfortunate part about this is that even if you get your etheric implants taken out, the first time I got them taken out, I had somebody do it for me, and it did work at the time. I was able to see a massive consciousness shift when it happened, but they came back. You can't just expect, a lot of times when you discover that these things exist, you just want them gone, right? And so you go to a healer and you have the healer do their thing, and then you're yay, I'm free. But that's actually not how it works. They also operate on certain levels of frequency and consciousness. So if you're operating within a frequency of fear, a frequency of guilt, of shame, of woundedness, they're a lot more easier to come back, right? So these are some of the things we need to navigate as human beings, breaking out of the false matrix. We're going to get caught up in really low vibrational emotions. So it's not to say, oh, never be in fear, never be in woundedness, never be in shame. However, the implants are able to attach when you're in a more lower frequency state. Also, there is this thing around like nanotechnology. There's a lot of ways these things are being implanted. We have to think that we only know so little about, about the sort of technology that we have access to. Like, just because we have access to certain technology, that doesn't mean that that's all that's out there. And when we think about, first of all, before I go any further, not a medical doctor, not a psychological professional or anything. This is just for entertainment purposes only. All right, let me continue. So another thing to really think about is these implants are not necessarily on our body. Okay, so one thing that we're talking about a lot right now is how far will AI and technology go, right? Like, when will it end? And there are these talks around like, well, will we one day be implanted? Like, will we have a chip in our brains or that sort of thing instead of having a phone? Like, will we have the technology within us? Well, that's happening on the third dimension. But when we talk about etheric implants and etheric weaponry, we cannot talk about this from the third dimensional plane. We have to expand our consciousness when we think about this, okay? So your etheric body does not exist within the third dimension. I would say this is more of a fourth dimensional phenomenon. Your etheric body is going to hold a lot of your traumas. It's going to hold a lot of your past lives. It's going to hold a lot of the ways in which you can be controlled in the false matrix through your emotions, through your mental manipulation and what have you. But the thing about it is that we don't learn about our etheric bodies in the school system. We don't learn about our etheric bodies as any sort of accepted medical knowledge. And yet this is something that has been known by shamans and ancient healing practitioners for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until we went into the age of rationality, the age of reason, right, when things shifted. And interestingly enough, a lot of this etheric technology, it's been around for a really long time, but there was a heightened level of warfare and implementation as it related to etheric implants somewhere around the time when the age of reason came in. Okay, so we're talking about like the 1700s, okay? So these are implants that, number one, the earth has, unfortunately. So there's one form of etheric implants I'm going to talk about right now. These are called J seals, all right? J seals are known as Jehovah's seals, and they were basically placed here by an interdimensional species that basically had a lot to do with seeding humanity as we know it today. Some refer to them as the Anunnaki, but actually they're really known, like in the spirit realm, as the Anunnaki. Just FYI. Especially if you are on a path of like revoking soul contracts and stuff with them, you want to refer to them as Anunnaki because that's what they're known as in the spiritual realm. But I digress. So they put these seals within the earth, 7 seals. And they're on certain meridians or on certain ley lines within the earth, and it's really been used to siphon and harvest the energy from the earthly plane. All right, so they did that on the earth, but one thing we need to understand, especially if you identify as like a light worker or a starseed or a grid worker, is your body is basically a map of the earth in a lot of ways. So just like those seals were implanted on the earth, and we need to do a lot to clear the ley lines of the earth, to reclaim the energy of the earth so that the earth can ascend. The same needs to happen in our body template. So all humans, all animals, or pets for sure, a lot of beings have these J seals, okay? On the left side, they're always going to be on the left side of your body. And they basically connect to certain chakra points, all right? And if you have these J seals on you, which we all do, it's very easy to be manipulated, to be controlled, that sort of thing, okay? And so those, if you're on this etheric implant removal journey, removing J seals is the first thing you want to do. Okay, researching what those are. There's information online about them. Like I said, I also have a Patreon where we go into more depth about that, and we actually have an etheric implant removal statement and prayer and meditation specifically as it relates to J seals that you could engage in and learn more about. And then there's also a PDF document, I think it's like 17 pages of just information around removing etheric implants, the kind that's out there. And more information is going to be coming on that platform. If you are seeking tools to remove these, and if you want some support with removing these more like on a one-on-one basis, I can support you with that too. And I always empower people to learn how to do this themselves. So we kind of go through the process together during the one-on-one session, and I guide you step by step through it, and then I also empower you with the tools and resources to follow up with clearing these out. I will say it's not a one and done deal. So removing J seals is the first thing that you want to do, but there are other etheric implants that must be removed. But a lot of times you got to remove those J seals first. Okay. The next thing you want to do after you remove J seals is you really want to start going into the mental programming that you have been unlearning, and unlearn that mental programming so that you are not so psychologically dominated by the false matrix. So there are many different chips and implants, and they're called holographic inserts that will make you see reality in a very particular way, and it's usually in a very boxed and closed in kind of way. There are chains, there are etheric chains. There could be this feeling like if you've ever felt like just really stuck in your life and that you weren't able to like change your situation. Yeah, that could be a mindset thing, but that also might mean that you have etheric implants that need to be removed, okay? And so there is a huge ego training that you must go through along with your process of removing etheric implants. I also have a collection of resources on ego training within my Patreon to support with this. It is some gnarly work. It's really clearing out your solar plexus. You have to do a lot of clearing of your solar plexus with this kind of work, okay? And it can be a little long and tedious. I mean, this is shadow work to the next level. You know, we talk about shadow work, but removing etheric implants, like this is what your shadow work is preparing you to do, is to go to this next phase of your liberation journey, okay? The reason why shadow work is so important and ego training is so important when it comes to removing these etheric implants is because there are a lot of parasitic entities that feed upon trauma. That's their food. That's their energy source. It's called loosh. It's basically, they're mirroring a lot of the Anunnaki as well. They utilized humanity as a slave race for many years and as a way to fuel them. Okay, so they did a lot to vampirize off of us as a species. And, you know, time's up for them. And at the same time, even though time's up for them and they're not in rulership anymore, we in humanity have a massive cleanup campaign to do. And a big part of that is revoking all consent to be vaporized off of. Even if we don't want to admit it, we have consented to being controlled and manipulated to this degree. Even if we weren't conscious of it, somewhere within, on some realm or some dimension, we gave our consent away to be harvested off of, to be controlled, to basically just say that the establishment knows best and leave it to them, and we kind of like handed them our sovereignty, as hard as that might be to hear or to think about. A big part of this process is understand that you are a sovereign creator being and to reclaim and take your power back. So along with removing your initial implants of the J seals, And along with doing the ego training and the intensive shadow work and the deprogramming process that you'll need to go through, the other thing that you'll also need to do along with this is revoking soul contracts, okay? This is something that, you know, it can be a little tedious because you want to revoke soul contracts on the individual level, the community level, the family level, the institutional level. Like, it goes pretty deep in terms of the sort of soul contracts that you've consented to, that you might need to just revoke all consent towards. And if that's something that you're seeking support on, I do also offer soul contract revoking sessions as well, and I'd be more than happy to support you on that journey. You can also do it yourself. It just takes a lot to go through the process. I have some resources on Patreon as well for like different vows that you can start revoking as well, and I'll be adding more soon. But there are many different access points. You can do this DIY kind of way. The good thing about working with a practitioner who's kind of done a lot of this stuff is it can kind of save you a lot of work and a lot of energy. A lot of the stuff I've learned through like trial and error. And, you know, sometimes there's these weird little mechanisms within the false matrix. Like, it's almost like when you start saying like, I'm sovereign and I'm a creator being and I'm reclaiming my power, sometimes there could be this really big energetic backlash that you get while you're exiting the false matrix, and it could just seem like your whole life is going to shit and that you're being punished and all that kind of stuff. Been there, done that, and I have navigated ways around that. That being said, I had to go through a lot of harsh and nasty experiences, and it's my hope to share learnings and teachings with folks so they don't have to have it as hard. It shouldn't have to be that hard, you know, but a lot of times we got to learn through experience. So that's why sometimes it's helpful to go to somebody who's had skills and experience with navigating this and has made it on the other side and can be like, hey, I tried that. This is what happened when I tried that. Like, maybe here are some of these other modalities or these other ways of approaching, or these ways that we can kind of fail safe what actions we're taking to ensure that we can embody joy and thriving as soon as possible. Okay. So when you when you remove your etheric implants, you also want to revoke soul contracts. It's a both and. You don't just remove your etheric implants, and you don't just revoke soul contracts. You must do both, okay? You got to think about it. The best way I can describe this is, I want you to think about folks who have been enslaved. Like if we even think about enslaved people in the U.S. When they were free, you know, when the war was won, a lot of times they still weren't liberated. A lot of times slave masters still controlled them, still made them think that they were enslaved, still treated them like they were enslaved. That's why we celebrate that holiday Juneteenth in the US, because that was the time when enslaved people, or formerly enslaved people in the US, like fully recognize their freedom of not being physically enslaved. Okay, so I just want you to think about that. That's a very third dimensional example that I can give to kind of contextualize this point. That's kind of the point that we're at as a human species. We're free, we're sovereign, we're liberated. And at the same time, we need to revoke the soul contracts. We need to work on our spiritual paperwork. We get to work on our exit forms. We got to do our whole deprogramming stuff. We got to heal from the massive ways that we have been vampirized off of, that we have been exploited, and that we've consented to having our energy harvested and taken. Okay, so that's kind of that's where we're at right now as a collective. And you know, even if you think about formerly enslaved people, how they weren't allowed to like read or write because there was such great power within the word. And even if you think about before slavery was abolished, the ones who were free needed to have like certain freedom papers that they had to take with them if they went anywhere, and how those freedom papers were super, super valuable. You need to go through a really deep process of your freedom paperwork, getting your freedom paperwork organized, getting your exit paperwork organized, to let your subconscious mind know that you're revoking those soul contracts, because somewhere you are upholding certain soul contracts, certain vows, certain oaths, and certain agreements. And this is no matter like how oppressed you feel or how much you feel like, oh, why is this happening to me? I can guarantee you that the reason why a certain bad situation is happening is because there's a soul contract somewhere that says it's okay for those certain experiences to take place within your life, okay? And it's not an easy process. It's not just, anybody who just says, oh, just do this declaration or listen to this 20-minute meditation and your soul contracts are revoked. Like, no. We have reams and reams of like Akashic records to clear and get through to make our new start. Okay, and so when I do soul contract one-on-ones with folks, it is very much around like, once again, empowering you. Like, we go through the process together with certain things, but it's also empowering you to do the work yourself too. All right, to prepare for your spiritual court case, as you will, if you will. All right, because there's a lot of dynamics that we may not fully be privy to that are working behind the scenes to also ensure that we are sovereign and that the earth raises in consciousness too. But we're not getting any handouts as a human species. Nobody's coming in on a white horse to save us. We are saving ourselves, okay? And so if we still have certain soul contracts in place to be exploited, to give our power away, the way universal law works is we're gonna have that experience, all right? Because we consented to it. So, the big part of this process is finding out where we agreed to have our power taken away and reclaiming that power, all right? So that's something I wanted to share around the interplay between removing your etheric implants and revoking soul contracts. You gotta kind of do both. You can't just choose one or the other, okay? And once you take out your J seals, start the deprogramming of your subconscious mind, revoking the soul contracts, like really working on, any etheric, or I guess I would say holographic inserts or frequency fences. That's another thing that you have to kind of disentangle yourself from, is a lot of like frequency fences that get alerted when you start raising in consciousness. Once you do that, then you want to start doing the more tedious work of removing the etheric implants within your heart space and your womb space, or your reproductive area, okay? There have been some pretty intensive etheric implants within the heart space, and a lot of times light workers, starseeds are targeted, and they're targeted through like false twin flame contracts and that kind of stuff. And a lot of times when you get involved and tied in with like a false twin flame, you can actually get caught up in this weird reversal network, and your energy can also be utilized and siphoned to disrupt the ley lines and to propel fallen timelines, okay? This stuff, is pretty intense. You definitely want to do the J seal removal first and the deprogramming first. The heart and the womb space are so powerful that there's a lot of intricacies and there's a lot of ancient wounding that you have to go through to get to the source of this to be removed, okay? And the rain just started getting that really cleansing energy as well as we talk about this. So, removing the etheric weaponry and the etheric implants from the heart space, and I'll do more content around that because that's a pretty deep one. And then there's also the higher chakras. There's some very high chakras that are going to be coming online. We haven't had access to them during this time of the Kali Yuga cycle, which is coming to a close. we haven't had access to these higher chakras, but they're ready to come online. But we gotta unplug from all of the etheric implants. Like a lot of these higher chakras also have etheric technology that needs to be dismantled before we can access it. And once again, if you are somebody who feels like a really old soul, who feels like you have a really high sense of consciousness, it's very likely that you're being vamped off of in the very high chakras because of that power, okay? So this is a huge ego. You have to go through a big ego death when you go through removing these etheric implants, right? Because you start realizing the depths that you've been manipulated, and the depths that, you might have also consented to do some things unknowingly that were counterintuitive to why you even incarnated on this planet, which was to raise the consciousness. But you might find that a lot of your energy has been siphoned to do the opposite, okay? And so this isn't about like pointing the finger or, no one's perfect in this. No one's hands are clean as it relates to this, but we have the power to reclaim our sovereignty in any given moment, okay? But it's not enough to just say, I reclaim my sovereignty. You gotta get these etheric implants taken out, and you gotta revoke soul contracts. And it can be a very tedious process, okay? So I just kind of wanted to share what my experience has been as it relates to this. I'll be doing more content as it relates to this. If you are ready to start this journey, consider joining the Patreon or booking a one-on-one session with me, or doing the online research and finding the resources that are available. There are resources available. One thing I will say is that utilizing the support of somebody who's kind of gone through the process, and not all the resources are of tip-top shape and that sort of thing. There are a lot of ways that I don't just utilize my own teachings, but I also have utilized some of the best resources that I found across the internet and kind of compiled them and synthesized into a database, okay, to remove these etheric implants. There's not one way to do this, and as you're gonna be activating your own power as a healer, as a shaman, as a light worker, to find the best ways to remove these implants and to maintain sovereignty over your energetic field. And I provide a great amount of resources to support you with getting in where you fit in regarding that, okay? And then you can kind of create your own special sauce from there. So that's kind of the spiel of this. I just want you to know that you're very supported in this process by your own higher self, by healers who have gone through this and are ready to share information and knowledge and wisdom. I'm one of them. And you are also supported by beings that you may not even fully know or realize, but that are also working and advocating in other timelines and parallel dimensions to support with the liberation of planet Earth at this time. So it's a really exciting time, but it's time for us to get our hands dirty and liberate ourselves from these soul contracts and etheric implants so we can live our best lives, all right? And always remember that you are the key. Until next time, peace.